Okay, we've done questions like this before, so you should have been able to just follow the pattern, right? With a basic cylinder, which is what we have here. You need to figure out the area of the circles first. So I do area of the circles, which is equal to 2 times pi times r squared. Then I'm going to figure out the area of the outside, or the rectangle, which equals 2 pi r h. You have to do that part on your own, right? It's not going to be given to you and laid out nicely. You got to look it up, figure it out, and then add those two things together to get the total surface area, which is what it wanted. We'll start with the area of the circle. You need the radius. If you look at your question, they didn't give you radius. They gave you diameter. They gave you all the way across. So you need to do that 7.6 divided by 2. You should get 3.8 as your radius. Make sure that you're doing that. If you calculate that, so 2 times pi times 3.8 squared, you should get 729,584. Thank you. If you do the second one, just wait. Does anybody have a question about that blue one?
Yeah. Can you be my doctor?
Would it round up to 91?
So if you're rounding that to the nearest whole number, we call it 91, right? If we're rounding nearest 10th, it'd be 90.7, right? Nearest 100th would be 97.73. Yeah, you're getting it. Okay. The area of like the label part, the outside of the can. You're going to do 2 times pi times r, which is 3.8, times the height, which in this case is 4.4. And you do get 105.054853. Remember, you actually want to add all those numbers. You don't want to round before adding. So when you add all those numbers, you end up getting 195.78400542. And if you look, by carrying all those extra numbers, I ended up getting 195.8. If you had rounded before, you would have still got 195.8. Right? But it doesn't, like, you don't know if that's actually going to work out in your favor or not. So you need to make sure you carry all the digits and then round. My final answer was 195.8. Yes, sir.
I got it right. Let's go.
The height for this question, that's a good question. Is this 4.4? Even though it's like laying down, if we imagine standing that cylinder up, that would show us the height maybe a little bit better. I'll come take a peek and help you out. We'll finish these last couple and then I'll come help you. Yes, sir.
For the black answer, I got 190. The only digit I had off was the last 2, and I got 1 instead.
Yep, that's okay. That's probably just like maybe pi and your calculator's using something different, or maybe you didn't get as many digits as me prior to that. So that's okay. But that's why we carry so many digits. If there is a mistake, it'll be right at the end, and then it won't affect us. Okay, example 5. I accidentally have the same word typed twice. I want you to find the area of the label, and then I want you to find the area of the total can.
What's cheese ravioli?
The label is what you would put around the outside.
That's some good cheese ravioli you got there.
Okay, I want you to try that question on your own. All right. The area of the can. So we're going to do the area of the label first. This is a good question because that's actually what people would be doing, right? If you're designing any sort of thing or trying to put something around the outside of something. It's like, how big of a rectangle do you need to be able to cover the whole outside of something? That happens all the time, right? So if we're doing the label only, that means we're not worrying about the circles on the top and the bottom. All we're worrying about is that rectangle when we unfold it, which would be 2 times pi times r times h. That's the outside around. For us, they actually gave us the radius. The radius is 2.5. And they gave us the height of 7. So we would go 2 times pi times 2.5 times 7. You throw that in your calculator, you should get
9.955742.
correct.
Wow.
That's what I got from the can.
And that's what Joe got. Right?
But I did got that from my
Did you get it? We're just going to say yes because everyone's looking.
Wait, so I had to add this that?
The question asked at that part of the question said, what's the area of the label? That's the area of the label, just the round outside. The next part was the area of the entire can. So the area of the entire can would include the 2 circles, right, on the top and the bottom. So that means we also have to calculate the circles. We know that the area of the circles is 2 pi r squared. If you put that in your calculator, 2 times pi times r squared, you would get 39.26990,817. The entire area of the can is the 2 things added together to get a final answer in blue of 149.2. Yeah, so when you're doing the area of the entire can, you're adding the circles plus the around the inside.
So the label would be round up, which would make it 110.
Good question. So if the question said, what's the area of the label only? And you had to round that. So what we're going to look at is what it is to round this thing I just highlighted in orange. If you wanted to round that to the nearest 10th, then you're looking at the 10th spot, which is a 9. Beside the 9 is a 5. That means I need to round 9 up. There is no number past 9. That's when you get those cases where you actually end up double rounding, right? So the next number would be 0, but then you also have to round the next number up, which would again be rounding up a 9. So it would be 0 again. And then you round the next number up, which would be a 1. Giving me an answer of 110.0. That's where you do double rounding. But you only double round if you're trying to round a 9 up, because you kind of run out of space, right? You don't have a number to go to. Yep.
Can you just say 110 instead of like the
Absolutely. So if you put 110 instead of 110.0, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, Jake.
How'd you get the 110?
Did you get the 109.95 part?
Yeah.
Okay, so to get to 110, I need to round that big number. This guy right here. Like, to round that to the nearest 10th, I look at the 10th spot, which is a 9. I look beside it is a 5. So I need to round that 9 up, right? The next 9, there is no number. It would be 10, which you can't put a 10 in there. That would make sense. You got 1 digit. So instead, you make it a 0, and you round the 1 in front of it up. That 1 from the 10 carries over. So the next number up would be another 0, which means it would round up again to become a 1. And then the 1 in front stayed the same for 110.0.
What was the point of finding the area?
That was the next part of the question. Yeah. Awesome. The last one we're going to do together because it's tricky and it's new to us. There's different ways that you can do it. So this is a semi-cylinder. That's where the cylinder's cut in half. 2 different ways of doing it. One way would be that you kind of do half circles, you do half the outside label. That works. Or you could do the whole can, like imagine there is an entire can, and then divide it by 2. That would work as well. I'm just going to show you if we take the area of a can, which is 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi r h, that's a whole can or cylinder. If we wanted half a cylinder, then we would divide that by 2. Now, that would cover the circle part in the back, and also cover like the label all the way around. But what it wouldn't cover is this top layer, which we would still have to figure out. The area of that top layer is a rectangle, right? We can see it pretty clearly. If you look, I'm going to erase it a little bit so you can see. The area of that rectangle is this side times this side. We would call that height times diameter, length times width. We would need to add that to our semi-cylinder, height times diameter. The cool part about this is if you did it like that and you went slow and you figured it out, that works. The good part about math is if you're dividing something by 2, if there's a 2 in everything that you're dividing, then they can all cancel out, giving us our actual final formula of pi r squared plus pi r h plus h times d. That would be our official final formula for a semi-cylinder. However, I don't expect you to memorize that. I would much rather you be able to logically think it through. Do an entire can, then divide the answer by 2, and then add the top part, the flat edge that we just created. If you're good at memorizing formulas, feel free to memorize that formula for a semi-cylinder. That's half of a cylinder. Yeah. Oh, I'm not sure. Okay, let's try it. So we want to figure out the surface area of this thing. I'm going to start by figuring out the surface area of the can. The surface area of a can would be 2. Where am I going to do this? 2 times pi times the radius, which is 2 squared, plus 2 times pi times the radius, which is 2, times the height, which is 9. If I put that in my calculator, that will tell me the area of the entire can. Which is 138.2300768. Sorry, those last decimal places get a little scrunchy. That would be if there was a whole can, but we don't have a whole can. So what do we do to that answer? Perfect. We divide it by 2. That gives me 69.11503838. That's the can, the 2 circles, the 2 half circles, and the half label. Then we're going to add the area on top, like that top surface, that rectangle, that flat edge across the top. That is 9 times 4. Height, right here, times width, which is 4. That'd be 36. If you add those 2 numbers together, it gives you the total area of 105.1, which is what you got. With any of these questions, and we're done for today, so I just want to recap it. With anything that we have done in Unit 2, It always comes down to breaking a shape up into its parts. Cylinders with circles plus a rectangle on the outside. Triangular prisms were triangles plus rectangles on the outside. Rectangular prisms were rectangles plus rectangles on the outside. Right? But you have to break them apart. It's the only way you're going to accomplish these types of questions.
What is that?
What is what? Sorry.
It's 38.
30. Oh, right here, like down here. What color?
36. Shut up.
Which color?
I don't know how to explain.
Yeah, go point to it.
Like, what is that?
That's a 2. What, if I connect my 2s into weird 8s, you can't figure it out? That's my fault, sorry.
Well, you gotta fix it now.
2 squared. Yeah, look better now. Now I got you, right? Sorry.
Your son would be proud.
My son would not be proud.